My eyes shot open, the world slamming back into focus. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't register where I was, my mind a scramble of half-remembered nightmares. The metallic tang in my mouth tasted alien. My body ached like it had been through a war zone. Which, knowing my luck, wasn't far from the truth. A hiss of gas, and the curved glass lid of my chamber slid open, revealing a blur of shapes and the stink of ozone. That wasn't a good sign. My survival instincts, honed over endless campaigns, snapped me back to reality. Figures leaned over me. Not human. Pale, spindly, with oversized black eyes. Aliens. That explained the unfamiliar smell and the taste of fear coating my tongue. My hands twitched toward where my rifle should have been, but I came up empty-handed, and restrained. One of the creatures trilled some unintelligible language. If it was surprise, they hid it well. Another tapped some commands into a translucent panel hovering near my head. My heart began a steady drumbeat against my ribs. Whatever they'd done, it kicked in my internal comm unit, the interface a familiar sting inside my head. Command, do you read? Commander Kale here, any forces in the sector, please respond. Silence. I tried again, sweeping a range of military channels, even the emergency broadcasts, but got nothing in return. Just like after Sears Station fell. Isolation that sank fangs into you, colder and crueler than any vacuum. The aliens watched me closely, their clicking and chirping an irritating symphony. At least they hadn't cut the line. That meant they either wanted information or were the most incompetent salvage crew in the galaxy. Given my track record, I was betting on the former. Survival meant playing along, for now. The fact remained, I was alive, and they'd gone to the trouble of pulling me out of whatever deep freeze I'd been in. There was a why in there, and that why was my way out. Can anyone understand me? My voice came out raspy. Damn, it had probably been a while. The tallest one, maybe their leader, stepped forward. In a garbled distortion of English, it said, "You speak standard. This is surprising." My gut clenched. These things weren't some clueless species stumbling about the stars. And you are? I kept my tone neutral. No point in antagonizing my captors just yet. Designation is irrelevant. What matters is that you, human, are a curiosity. The thing practically hummed with smugness. Like I was a bug under a magnifying glass instead of a soldier who'd been at the bloody edge of a war for the last decade. Curiosity in what way? Time to start fishing for details. Your kind was thorough. In its extinction, it chirped, and there was a gleam in those black eyes that could freeze a man's blood. Well, that was unexpected. Extinct? No way. Stubborn as cockroaches, that's what humanity was. We always bounced back. Yet, the silence from command was deafening, especially if these things knew something we didn't. I don't need a history lesson, I said, pushing down the rising nausea. What do you want? Answers, human. Your ship was recovered, derelict. Yet, you were alive. Technology we do not possess. We wish to understand. That sent a ripple of unease down my spine. We didn't have stasis tech that advanced. If these aliens did, it changed everything. The tech advantage had been our last big bargaining chip in this war. One of the smaller creatures began working on the restraints. They weren't taking any chances. Thick mag cuffs clamped around my wrists and ankles, limiting my movement to barely a shuffle. Whoa, hold up, I protested, only half faking the panic. Where exactly are you taking me? A flicker of impatience, or maybe amusement, crossed the leader's bulbous head. Our destination isn't yours to question. You will comply. This is non-negotiable. The arrogance of it bit deep. These things thought they'd won. I was starting to see why humanity lost the damn war, if all that was left was overinflated idiots like this crew. It almost made me want to cooperate, just to see the looks on their faces when I inevitably slipped their leash. Almost. I let them haul me up. My muscles screamed in protest, my body stiff from however long I'd been on ice. They steered me down a curving corridor, smooth and seamless with a bluish glow that was starting to hurt my eyes. Alien tech always had that off-putting, too perfect feel to it. My mind raced. These beings knew more about what had happened to Earth than I did. If I played this right, I might find my way back to the fight and figure out if there was anyone left to fight for. The leader, my escort, I guessed, kept throwing glances back at me, its bulbous head swiveling. Maybe some part of its spidery brain sensed it was dealing with more than just a confused, out-of-time soldier. Tell me, I said, keeping my voice deliberately casual, is this the first human you've encountered? The first living one? Yes. It chirped a sound that could have been a laugh. Your kind made quite the impression. During your short reign. The thing gave a full-body shudder, whether in disgust or fear, it was hard to tell. My mouth tightened. Short reign, it said. Just how much time had passed? And what the hell did it mean by impression? We'd fought tooth and nail every step of the way. We reached a heavy-looking glass door. It slid open with a low hum, revealing a space that looked a bit like mission control back on the Vanguard. Consoles, blinking lights, more of those unnerving translucent screens. If they thought this display of power would intimidate me, they were dead wrong. The leader pointed to a high-backed chair in the center of the room. You will sit. Remain still. We have need to study you. Study me. Like I was a lab specimen. Yeah, that wasn't going to fly. Instead of arguing, I shuffled towards the chair, letting the aliens think they were in control. Every inch I moved, I catalogued my surroundings. Escape routes, the positions of the other aliens in the room, a small, almost unnoticeable control panel set into the wall near the door. Bingo. Just before reaching the chair, I stumbled, my weak legs giving out beneath me. As planned, my captor rushed over to help, a warble of concern issuing from its translator. That's all the opening I needed. I pivoted on my heel, my mag-cuffed fist catching him square in the jaw. Or, whatever passed for a jaw on these walking nightmares. The force of the blow sent it sprawling. Chaos erupted. Aliens shrieked and scattered, their noises strangely high-pitched and bird-like. 2 more lunged at me, and muscle memory took over. The skills drilled into me on 100 battlefields came flooding back. A duck beneath a grasping claw, a twist and an elbow catching a spindly throat with a sickening crack. The second attacker I disarmed, literally, its segmented limb popping free with a wet tearing sound. I used their own weapon, whatever energy pulse it fired, to keep them back. Turns out spindly aliens were fragile. A blast or two, and they crumpled. It gave me precious seconds. I bolted for the control panel I'd spotted earlier. My fingers flew across it, muscle memory guiding me even though the symbols were gibberish. With a jolt of disorientation, the artificial gravity seemed to stutter, then shift. The aliens cried out in confusion as they went tumbling. Now, to find a way off this damn ship. I hit the comm switch, hoping against hope that my hail would find someone, anyone, out there. This is Commander Kale, United Earth Forces. Any survivors, any ships in the sector, come in. Over. Static. The silence clawed at me, a chilling reminder of Sears. Yet this time, the isolation felt heavier, tinged with the grim implication that Earth itself might be gone. Repeat. Commander Kale, United Earth Forces. Seeking any survivors. My voice held a desperate edge now. Then, a flicker on the screen. A distorted signal, barely a blip on the radar, but there. Something out in the vast, cold reaches of space was responding. Commander Kale. Is anyone here? An unstable voice crackled through, broken, almost unintelligible. Hope crashed into me like a rogue meteor, hot and painful. Affirmative. Who is this? Identify yourself. There was no mistaking the standard UAF code buried in that garbled mess. I clung to it like a lifeline. Lieutenant Hala, Vanguard, Sector. Even through the interference, the shock in her voice was clear. That meant. The Vanguard? It's still operational? The flagship, lost with all hands presumed for nearly a year now. A resurgence of adrenaline flooded my veins. If a piece of the fleet still existed, that meant humanity wasn't entirely wiped out. Affirmative, heavy damage, drifting. Each word seemed to cost her. You? How? Long story. Listen, Lieutenant, time is critical. I'm on a hostile vessel, need emergency extraction. Can you lock on this signal? My fingers danced over the unfamiliar console, attempting to isolate a viable beacon. The aliens were recovering, a flurry of screeches and flailing limbs. Time was running out. 2 were down, but the leader was regaining its footing, that unsettling black gaze fixed on me. Kale, sir, that signature. The lieutenant's voice wavered. We can't. It's not possible. Unease pricked at me. Not possible. Explain, Lieutenant, I yelled back, fending off an alien that tried to tackle me from behind. The signal flickered, and for a moment, the line went dead. Then, in a tone heavy with a mix of dread and disbelief, the lieutenant spoke. Sir, that signal, it's coming from inside their territory. Territory. Ice flooded my veins. These weren't some hapless scavengers. The way their leader had spoken of our extinction, the deliberate way they'd revived me. I'd walked directly into the lion's den. I swore under my breath, dodging a blast that left a scorch mark on the wall where I'd been standing. Lieutenant, listen carefully. Change of plans. I can't get to you, but you might be able to get to me. Through the comm, I could hear the sounds of battle on the lieutenant's end. Orders barked, bursts of weapons fire. They weren't sitting ducks either. Good. A fighting chance was all I needed. I keyed in a series of coordinates based on the alien ship's trajectory and what limited star charts I could access. Luckily, my captors seemed to be lousy navigators, too focused on studying their prize catch, it seemed. Lieutenant, I'm sending rendezvous coordinates. High risk, but it's our best shot. Punch a hole through their defenses and get me out of here, I shouted over the din as another alien lunged at me. Her response was immediate, clipped, understood, Commander. Vanguard won't leave a soldier behind. Tala out. The comm line clicked dead, but the fire in her voice had fueled my own resolve. My current problems, namely the aliens determined to take me down, suddenly seemed much more manageable. Predictable even. And predictable could be exploited. They changed tactics, likely alerted by their leader. Instead of all-out attack, they tried to subdue me. Nets, hazer-like prods, I countered each with a mix of instinct and sheer bloody-mindedness. The key was to create an opening. Their control room was vital to my escape, yet it was starting to feel uncomfortably crowded with angry, spindly beings. I needed to change up the battlefield. Feigning desperation, I retreated towards the blast door. With a well-timed boot to the control panel, I managed to overload the system. Lights flickered wildly, the artificial gravity fluctuating sickeningly. The aliens shrieked in disorientation, their movements uncoordinated now. Then the blast door began to cycle, not fully open, but enough to squeeze through. In the chaos, I sprinted for the half-open gap, the aliens scrambling in my wake. The corridor beyond was a blur. I knew roughly where their engine room should be, if their tech followed the same basic design principles as ours. Disorientation was my ally now. I ducked and weaved, blasts sizzling past me as they fired wildly. A lucky shot clipped my shoulder. Pain lanced through me, hot and blinding, but it only fueled my fury. Rounding a corner, I spotted what looked like a central power core. A haphazard collection of energy conduits and pulsing reactor nodes, surprisingly unguarded. Desperate times. I slammed my mag-cuffed hands against a particularly juicy-looking node. The shockwave that ripped through me nearly knocked me out. The corridor lights dimmed and sparked. In the semi-darkness, I heard a shriek rise above the rest, full of rage and panic. Their leader. Good. Now it was really annoyed. Stumbling, I pushed forward. My vision was swimming, and every breath brought a metallic tang to my mouth. I could hear the aliens gaining on me, their warbling cries getting louder. Ahead, at the end of the corridor, was another blast door. This one, I hoped, led to an escape pod bay or some similar way off this god's-forsaken ship. I rammed it with my shoulder, again and again, the agony in my arm almost making me black out. Finally, with a groan of protesting metal, the door slid open. I practically tumbled into a small, cramped space. Escape pods. My heart pounded with a surge of desperate hope. Even in the gloom, I could tell these weren't your standard issue one-man pods. Sleek, oversized, probably meant for privileged higher-ups. A rush of ironic satisfaction washed over me. Looks like my captor's arrogance was going to be their downfall. I slammed a fist against the launch panel. Nothing. Dead. Of course, these aliens wouldn't make it easy on me. There had to be a manual override. My eyes scanned the pod's interior, landing on a sealed compartment near the pilot's seat. Just as the first alien lunged through the doorway, I pried the compartment open. Inside, nestled amongst emergency supplies. A weapon. Not just any weapon, but a UE-issue pulse rifle. Standard tech, familiar, a reassuring weight in my hands. I turned and fired. The alien shrieked as the blast caught it square in the chest. It vaporized in an acrid cloud of smoke. The stench made me gag, but I held my ground, weapon trained on the doorway. They came then, a wave of spindly limbs and enraged screeches. The pod was tight, barely enough room to maneuver, but it became my fortress. Each energy blast illuminated their pale, distorted forms, their panic chirps echoing harshly in the confined space. I fought with the cold fury of a cornered animal, every shot finding its mark. It was brutal, messy, and glorious. The escape pod ejected from the alien ship